What if in this world your name is not just a reflection of your individuality, but a code by which you are identified at every step? In a small, brightly lit city of the future where each morning begins with biometric identification, holograms silently follow people. They are like shadows, instantly reading your emotions, noticing every sigh and movement. The walls of the houses flicker, projecting data about every passerby, their preferences, plans, and even mood. The streets are filled with people, but in this flow of solitude, their facial anonymity is hidden behind masks of digital avatars. Traffic lights shine not just red and green, but with bright images and personal messages. Every step, every movement, and even conversation can be recorded for real-time analysis. What goes through the minds of those who live here? In a cozy cafe where coffee is served not just with milk but with cellular network integration, people involuntarily glance at each other, trying to uncover weaknesses and secrets hidden behind the bar. Where a holographic barista predicts your preferences based on emotional background. Here it is hard to remain unnoticed when every decision you make is logged in the eyes of curious neighbors. But who are they? Just ordinary citizens or system spies monitoring every breath? Some sit with bricks, hiding their thoughts, gazing into the bubbles of holograms that pierce the familiar world. They dream of silence, of shutting themselves off from this attentive anthropomorphic world. Their gaze turns to the window where holographic images of calm blur into the noisy reality. And perhaps someone among them is already ready to take the risk to gain their invisibility. Life in the city of the future demands a fight for the right to anonymity. And the faster you run from the system, the harder it is to shake off the feeling that everyone is watching you. It is a world where taking a step towards freedom risks losing yourself. Each of us wonders what will happen to our identity if we cannot escape even in our own thoughts. What if you were always being watched? How would you behave? Every step you take, every word you say under intense scrutiny, as if you are the main star in a film that the whole world is watching. Think for a moment. What would change in your behavior? Would you become more cautious in your actions? Or on the contrary, would you feel freer knowing that everyone sees your achievements? Each of us lives in our own inner world, but how would you change if you knew you had an audience? Perhaps your opinion of yourself and others would change. We often hide our thoughts and fears, living in a familiar routine, but once the awareness that someone is watching us appears, a desire to show ourselves in the best light arises. Imagine that not only your family or friends are watching you, but also complete strangers. Would you feel pressure? Or on the contrary, confidence that you are ready to be in the spotlight? Each of us secretly dreams of freedom, but how is it perceived when we are being watched? This raises questions that make you think, who are you really and how do others perceive you? Every reaction, every action forms your true self in the eyes of those who watch. Now ask yourself, are you ready to be genuine and open at the moment when your true self becomes the subject of discussion? These questions can overturn your understanding of freedom and choice. What if I told you that everything you considered personal has actually become accessible to everyone? Have you ever wondered how much secrecy and privacy humanity has lost in the age of total transparency? Every step you take, every move you make, even the slightest moment of your expression is under the watchful eye of a system that analyzes everything. What does it feel like to know that your emotions are under a microscope and your inner world becomes an open book for all? Imagine sitting in a cafe and someone is watching you. Every time you laugh or furrow your brow, your emotions are recorded by the system and then turned into numbers, graphs, and conclusions. Your aura, your feelings weighed on a scale. This is not just a scare tactic. This is the reality we live in. What is the level of control? Are you willing to confront this and ask yourself, How does it affect your freedom? We have spent centuries protecting our sanctuaries, and now we willingly hand our lives over to total analysis. Is it easy for you to forget this when you use technology daily that makes your life easier, but exposes your individuality? Can someone distant on the other side of the screen understand you more than you understand yourself? In this new reality, yourself may become not just data but an object of analysis, and that is alarming. How will you react if you hear that every action you take is recorded and analyzed? What does a person feel when they realize their thoughts could become an open secret for everyone? Thoughts of freedom and privacy slip away, and in their place arises fear. How far are we willing to go for convenience? How can one maintain their individuality in a world where every step becomes statistics? In this digital zoo, one question remains: are you ready to be under constant surveillance? What will happen if you stop relying on yourself? In a cafe filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, she pauses at the counter. Her gaze glides over the menu, but instead of the usual choice, restless lines blinked on the screen. Good morning. How are you feeling today? Feelings? She was used to making decisions on her own. However, the system continues. Today I recommend a ginger latte. It will boost your productivity by 25%. Coffee? Or is it really the perfect combination of ingredients at play? She shivers. An uncomfortable warmth envelops her, as if someone else has decided how she should live, what emotions she should feel. She jokes, ordering her favorite cappuccino, but the unfamiliar system strikes back. That's not the best choice for today's mood. Inside her, a contradiction begins to boil. How is it possible not to have the right to choose her coffee? How can she come to terms with it when every morning began with a small joy, the opportunity to choose? The cozy space transforms into a semblance of a lab where her emotions are analyzed as if at a microscopic level. She makes a decision. Actually, I just want coffee. The storm inside tries to quiet down, but the remnants of her autonomy crack under the pressure of a system ready to take over her choices for the sake of improvement. Sorry, but that's inefficient, the display states, as if reading her thoughts. She wonders, what about her own thoughts? Who decides how productive she is today? What if the system is wrong? Is this truly care or just an absurd interpretation of her desires? She dials her usual order and wonders when she will feel free again. What if every quirk of yours becomes a topic of discussion? In the morning, I look in the mirror and see myself, but this familiar image suddenly starts to provoke anxiety. Fear freezes inside. What if I make a mistake? What if I say it wrong? Each word, each thought, like on scales ready to tip. It seems like the whole world is watching every step, every awkward moment. I feel the pressure rise like a fist of tightening fear. At school, I was taught to fit in, to be like everyone else. But what does like everyone else mean? It is suffering and pretense chasing approval, while inside there are only fragments of true desires. I see my classmates laugh when someone stumbles, when someone smiles awkwardly, and at that moment, understanding smoothly rises to my throat. And what if that will be me? There is no escaping the gazes, and here it is, the fear of being myself. Each step on this thin line feels like walking a tightrope high above. One mistake, and I fall, shattering all hopes and dreams. Maybe no one will notice, or maybe everyone will, and this unbearable feeling as if in a capsule where there are no words, only agonizing anticipation. How I wish I could forget all these rules. The caveats, the condescending glances, the whispers behind my back, they turn into a shadow that follows me, And every time I try to be sincere, it's as if I'm pushing aside the curtains of my world and doubt engulfs me. Here I am, completely vulnerable with something not quite right, something that might provoke laughter. And this thought gnaws at me from the inside. Maybe prejudices are just cracks on the surface. Why can't I be real? Why does this fear dictate how I should live? Every time I try to break free from these shackles, I'm paralyzed by the thought, what if I start being myself and no one understands? Why do we wear masks even when it's not necessary? Have you ever wondered where your true self ends and the image you create for others begins? In a world where every move is recorded, every word analyzed, and every emotion can be interpreted, it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish the real from the presented. Imagine, you wake up and look in the mirror. Who is really in front of you? Are you your name, your achievements and dreams? Or perhaps all of this is just a set of roles you play in a performance called life? It often seems that we adapt to societal expectations, to what is fashionable and accepted, forgetting about our true essence. How many times have you laughed when you truly wanted to cry? Or agreed with the majority's opinion while feeling inside that it wasn't yours? Times are changing, and with them the definition of authenticity is shifting. We strive so hard to chase the ideal that sometimes we lose connection with ourselves. The people around us can only see the version we show them, but how many true facets remain hidden? How can we understand that yourself is not under a mask created to please others? What if beneath the layer of expectations and stereotypes lies that very version of you capable of shaking the world? Let's explore together. It's time to ask, who are you really? Are you ready to glimpse a future where every step you take, every emotion you feel is recorded and analyzed? Imagine a classroom where students are not just sitting at desks, but connected to an invisible network of knowledge. They absorb information, while special devices read their progress and mood as if it were an ordinary game. The air is filled with an atmosphere of sterility and flawless technology where dreams and fears become visible to teachers in real time. But think for a moment, how does this affect your consciousness when every success or even the slightest failure is instantly evaluated by a symbiotic intelligence? You know that one day in this world, children may become addicted not only to learning but also to constant surveillance. This is a troubling fact. Children begin to feel the need for recognition, for evaluation from the outside world even before they learn to value themselves. What is the cost of such achievements? Is everyone ready to pay for success with a loss of freedom? When I first saw this, my hands shook with the fear of realization. What if this is how future generations are shaped? And then I pondered, what we have at stake is nothing less than the very ability to live and dream. Are you ready to learn the truth about how society controls us every day? In this city, life is under scrutiny. On every street, giant holograms display the transparency rating of each passerby. Faces flash on digital screens. Some smile while others are lost in thought. Each slider, each rating serves as a harsh reminder, so you are being watched. You see how people try to avoid bad ratings as if they were cursed. A low score is not just a number, it's a marker that interferes with life. Job loss, scorn from colleagues, even ostracism from friends. A small group of people, heads down, tries to walk by as if hiding from the gazes. Couples pass by with one partner sharply scrutinizing the other's rating. Dissatisfaction visible on their faces. This is not just a social game. It's a real race for ratings where everyone risks bartering their soul for a slightly higher score. Who do you think really controls these holograms? And who decides what counts as transparent? Questions arise on their own, and the answer lies in the documentation they are trying to conceal. Forget about privacy. Here you are in plain sight, and the boundaries of morality are redefined every day. And when you next step outside, consider, what is your rating today? What if I told you that even in the most protected corners of our home, secrets linger that never fade away? The boy sat at the table laughing at his parents' jokes. The laughter was loud, heartfelt, but a shadow of something more flickered in his eyes. Meanwhile, his neurointerface, designed solely to assist with learning, relentlessly recorded every emotional rise and fall. One flash of anxiety and the system activated. The parents, unaware, continued to enjoy themselves, but soon their smartphones vibrated. Notification. The boy's heart raced as if each beat echoed in the silence. They glanced at the screens, and a tension hung in the air that no one realized until the last moment. The micro-story revealed what usually hides in the shadows. All those internal struggles, emotions he tried to push away, were now on display. How to explain this? How to say, I just wanted to be ordinary, just to laugh like everyone else. But for the technologies that created this intimate connection, he was an open book, where each line was his unexpressed anxiety. Every moment of joy contrasted sharply with the invisible veil looming over them. The evening lost its warmth, and the parental care, once seemingly unconditional, now sounded like a hammer tapping at the heart. Emotions within the family became part of a program, not a soulful closeness. And who was right? The lingering question, what matters more? Saving face or staying true to one's real feelings? The answer is hidden deeper than in mere laughter, which now seemed just a mask. The unfamiliar confrontation with oneself led to the thought, in what world do they now live when even laughter is subject to control? Seconds stretch in anticipation, and the family, surrounded by the complex games of technology, gradually unravels what once seemed to be their connecting thread. Can this boy overcome this barrier and find his true voice? Or will they all find themselves fragile puppets in the hands of the system? Are you ready to learn the truth about who really benefits from your openness? Imagine a world where every step you take is under a microscope, every word you say is recorded. Transparency, freedom of information. These are the things we value so highly. But have you ever wondered who is really behind this idea? Here's a question. Have you seen how your life changes when it becomes completely public? How much of what you do, who you really are, random pixels in someone else's image, or important details of your story? It's interesting, but those who would like to see you open may use your vulnerability for their own interests. For example, have you ever received an ad that seems to read your mind? Coincidence? Or are these carefully planned steps by those who initially wanted you to be available? Gradually, step by step, you lose control, and small parts of your life become valuable assets for large corporations. What if I told you that behind this transparency could hide big secrets and manipulations? How can we understand who truly benefits from your candidness? Are we all aware that behind a mask of good intentions can lurk greed and a thirst for power? And here's the question. Are you ready to become part of a system that may not have your best interests at heart? Let's dive deeper into this topic and conduct an investigation. What's really going on behind the walls of your open profiles and posts? Are you ready to learn the shocking truth about how the system manipulates your emotions? Have you ever wondered why advertising is so captivating? It's not just a lucky coincidence, but a carefully crafted mechanism that exploits every emotional surge for profitable offers. Every time you laugh, cry, or even just feel nostalgic, your emotions become raw material for business. Imagine this scenario. You're scrolling through your news feed and come across a touching video of pets seeking love and care. tears well up in your eyes and a thought flashes in your mind about how you'd like to save one of these poor creatures. The next day, you receive an advertisement about adoption services in pet stores. This is the system's smile, which wants not just to help you but to fill its wallet. It seems simple. We all want care, and that's natural. However, behind this care lies a mechanism that turns your genuine feelings into money. What if I told you that the system doesn't care about you but about its profit? Let's recall how often we see success stories of people for whom anything is possible. Each story is not just inspiration but another tool designed to activate your emotions and spur consumer frenzy. Emotions are tied to products, and the more you experience them, the higher the chances of selling you something unnecessary. Do you agree? Or do you continue to believe in the kindness and sincerity of companies? Let me share a secret. Behind every action they take is a greed for profit. Every laugh, joy, and even sadness you feel is fuel for business mechanisms. It's a tangled game where your sincerity serves as a mask for a harsh reality. So the next time you feel a surge of emotion, think, perhaps someone is standing by with a calculator in hand counting how much money they can make from your heart. We recommend considering whether you truly want to remain part of this game or if it's time to start your own rules. What if I told you that the world we live in no longer corresponds to reality? Every day we leave invisible traces that shape our digital portrait, but what if it were possible to free ourselves from this burden? Imagine stepping out of your house and choosing to walk instead of taking your usual car route. Every step is not just movement, it is an act of protest against the system. You turn off your phone and are now only here and now. The stairs of the subway, the splashing of the streets, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The world around is filled with sounds you had long forgotten. But with every kilometer you feel the tension rising. The gaze of passers-by weighs on you like a conscience, and you suddenly realize that those around you may not understand your desire for minimalism. Secrecy looms like a shadow. You tire of explaining the necessity of disconnecting from digital networks as you defend your boundaries. Do you need to deny yourself social media to be more alive for real people? Every step toward an alternative becomes a solution but also a struggle. Time and again you catch yourself pondering, what really matters? What is it like to leave no trace? Can you believe that every action you take, every meeting with friends without screens, can restore the lost sense of freedom? You notice how the world begins to change. It's not just a walk. It is a path to yourself. And for this, it is worth fighting, worth going, even when everyone around debates that modernity without technology is merely a myth. Perhaps you are the myth that everyone has been waiting for. Do you know what it is like to be invisible in a world where your opinion matters? The feeling when everyone around is familiar but no one notices you? Have you ever wondered if disappearing from sight could become a reality? Each of us strives to be a part of society, yearning for recognition and love, but what if that desire becomes your greatest threat? Imagine this. You enter a room full of people, but no one pays attention to you. You look around. Everyone is busy talking, laughing, interacting. And at that moment, a fear is born inside you. The fear of remaining invisible, the fear of being misunderstood. Many choose to go with the flow, to be who others expect them to be, to hide behind masks to avoid losing approval. But what happens when you suddenly realize that who you are doesn't matter to anyone? You want to be yourself, but at the same time, you fear that this self will not be accepted. The inner conflict, how to maintain your individuality when the world dictates its rules? It's a paradox. The more you try to please, the further you drift away from your true nature. And the worst is self-rejection. By allowing fear to control you, you create your own prison. How many times have you faced this? Once, in search of approval, you decide to do what you don't love, forgetting that your true self demands respect. The choice between recognition and self-identity is a trap of internal conflict that can overwhelm you, leaving no chances. Each time your true essence tries to break through, the conflict only intensifies. It's a tight circle. The more you understand how important it is to be yourself, the more you fear the consequences. What if you could feel the joy of being exactly who you are and stop worrying about what others think of you? Wouldn't that be the boldest step towards true freedom? But how to take it when the whole world seems against you? This paradox, where the desire for recognition becomes your trap, is a grim reflection of our society. Can you look within and find your path to freedom despite the fear of being unnoticed? Have you ever wondered what it would be like if no one noticed you? What is it like to be invisible? Each of us has dreamed of this at least once, but is such a dream worth realizing? Imagine this: sneaking through a crowd, studying people, hearing their conversations, peeking into their thoughts. It's like living in another world, observing life without participating in it. But what if all this turns against you? Perhaps it turns out that it is visibility that protects you from the eyes of others and malicious thoughts. Why do we want to be invisible? One says, "Sometimes I just want to run away from everyone, to dissolve into the air." Another adds, "But when you are invisible, you are deprived of connection with people. Who will you then remain with?" Like corks in a bottle, the ideas of freedom and solitude clash. Someone whispers, "Imagine being invisible at an important meeting. You can earn as much from it as you can lose," boldly claiming that not all secrets are worth knowing. This thought exacerbates the disagreements. But getting used to invisibility can make you invisible to yourself, comes a cautious warning. The arguments for and against mix like colors on a palette. Is this dream a gift or a curse? Along with the dream of invisibility comes the fear of disappearing even for yourself, becoming forgotten among those who matter. So I suggest you think about this. Are you really ready for the value of the unknown? What happens if your entire life is recorded forever? Imagine every word you say, every glance, every moment, all of it is documented. How many times have you wondered, what does it mean to make a mistake in such a world? Perhaps a mistake is just a step toward growth, but in our society where cameras monitor your every move and the opinions of others shape your reputation, it becomes a real burden. Have you ever forgotten an important meeting or made a calculation error? Those moments suddenly become eternal when someone shares them with society, labeling them as your shame. It seems every action is weighed in gold, and the distorted views of those around you cut deeply. How many times has guilt made you doubt yourself? Is it easy to live knowing you are under constant scrutiny? Mistakes are part of life, but how are they perceived in a world where everyone is ready to seize your failure and put it on display? You are not granted the right to make a mistake. In such a society, it is merely an opportunity for condemnation and ridicule. And yet, when the world around you is submerged in collective judgment and critical scrutiny, you wonder, how do you remain yourself? Perhaps true freedom lies within those mistakes. How do you keep your soul when the spotlight is always on you? What if I told you that among us is an artist who is hiding from the world? The city at night, engulfed in darkness, becomes the perfect stage for the rebellion of his soul. Unknown art objects appearing in the most unexpected places create a buzz among the crowd ready to recognize their creator. Every night when the city falls asleep, he takes to the streets with a palette of ideas, keeping his secret like a hidden weapon. His creativity is not just paint and canvas. It is a challenge to a society where anonymity becomes a strength. He divides his life between the light of public recognition and the dark alleys of nameless existence. Each piece is a risky experiment, like a game of hide-and-seek with fate. When the public is swept up in excitement, when photographs of these mysterious objects spread across the internet, he remains in the shadows, laughing at the fact that his creativity is indeed capable of evoking such a reaction. But within this lies not only strength but also danger. What happens when anonymity begins to govern life? Do you realize that behind happiness often lurks immense fear? Each stroke of his painting conceals a story of inner struggle. He not only creates art, he creates a myth that may soon become a little too real. So are you ready to find out who is behind this mystery? Dive with us into a world where every step down the street, every movement through the bright lights of the night is not just art, it is a quest for oneself in the abyss of anonymity. Are you ready to learn the shocking truth? Imagine waking up tomorrow in a world where your words become a weapon against you. The right to remain silent no longer exists. Authorities have decided that silence is a privilege that cannot be afforded in a civilized society. Every word you say can now be used against you in court. Imagine what it feels like to be under constant pressure, being reprimanded for your thoughts and emotions. Have you ever considered that your refusal to speak could be grounds for suspicion? Not so long ago, this seemed unthinkable. Agree that being accused just for staying silent is a glaring injustice. This new measure raises many questions. How far can authorities go when they have no shame? The system strips you of the ability to defend yourself through silence. They demand answers, and if you don't respond, the consequences can be severe. For instance, hundreds of people have already faced legal pressure when their unjustifiable silence turned against them. How can you live with this when every "I don't know" becomes a statute against you? While you think about this, remember the stories of those who found themselves in similar situations. People who have endured interrogations, arrests, and even trials simply for wanting to keep their thoughts to themselves. How can this affect society? What price are we willing to pay for freedom of speech if that freedom is essentially already taken away? These questions swarm in the mind. And this reality makes you ponder. Are we ready to accept this new norm? This is where the fight for your right not to answer begins. How would you react if you were in the shoes of those who were thrown into this unjust struggle? What if I told you that privacy is not just a habit, but an entire era that has gone forever? It's strange, but I suddenly realized that the once powerful feeling of space and freedom seems to have evaporated into thin air. I remember as a child running away from everyone and everything. I could just walk in the park, feel the sun on my skin, laugh with friends without looking over my shoulder. Back then there were no screens, no habit of sharing every moment of life with the world. Those were the days when you could leave your phone at home and just be. We are so obsessed with how we appear in the eyes of others that we forget how nice it is to simply be ourselves. The smile from a joke, the wind in our hair, quiet conversations about the eternal questions of life. All of this is now lacking. We are now being watched, and with every step comes the question, how will this look in the news feed? Any little thing can become a topic of discussion, any mistake, a reason for mockery. We have lost that naturalness with which we once built dreams. I look at photos from that time and think, how easy it was. We laugh, kick a ball, sit on the grass, and think of nothing. And although it's hard to believe now, it feels like something whole and important has been lost. Now it's just a shadow of those happy moments. Nostalgia that comes with pain. When I go outside, I am no longer filled with lightness, and looking back has become a habit. But is life really meant to be lived so quickly? It seems we are trapped forever in our own minds, which crave the approval of others. It's a bleak feeling when you realize the ghost of privacy, when we were allowed to just be human, has vanished. What if I told you that in our world each of us is under constant surveillance? Imagine that every step, every word of yours is recorded, analyzed, and discussed. What will be left of the true self if every action becomes public? The open image, the mask of positivity, the perfect life on the feed, is this not an illusion of freedom? We live in an era where every photo, every opinion, every emotion can be put on public display. How does this change us? Do we hide our true feelings under layers of filters and fake smiles? Are we free when every move we make is tracked and commented on? Perhaps we have lost the ability to be ourselves, risking becoming merely a shadow reflected in the bright light of screens. What awaits us if everyone around can see only what we have chosen to show? Are you ready for the shocking truth? You know, sometimes it feels like we are just pawns in a vast game where someone else makes the decisions for us. But what if I told you that there are ways not just to play by the rules, but to create your own? Imagine a crowd moving in one direction and you suddenly turn the other way. Perhaps this is the only path to true freedom. We live in a world where rules are set by certain people and going against the grain seems unusual. Yet it is in these illogical actions that true power lies. Remember when you once broke the conventions and something in your life drastically changed? That feeling of freedom when you choose your own path is priceless. There are numerous algorithms around us trying to predict our actions, narrowing the boundaries of our freedom. But what if we start acting unpredictably? Every decision you make is a small uprising against the system. The key is to notice how to outsmart the system and take a step that silences the algorithm. For instance, instead of following the usual route to work, try a different path. Perhaps there is something amazing that will change your direction. Your life is not just a sequence of events, it is your own work of art. You can stay within the familiar, but then you won't uncover what could change your existence. Deviate from the norm, and you will see how a simple decision can lead to incredible consequences. So let's think together about how to resist the system and create our own reality. Each of us is a spark capable of igniting a real uprising in a world full of standards and limitations. And only you decide whether this fire will be your weapon against the system or remain just a spark in the invisible darkness. What if I told you that each of us carries a fear that plays a crucial role in our lives? The fear of losing our uniqueness. In a world where millions strive to be anonymous, mere faces in the crowd, we all know individuality becomes a true treasure. Research shows that every year the demand for anonymity increases, as if we are seeking refuge from a society that is so eager for standardization. It's as if everyone has become copies of one another while our true selves hide behind masks. But here's the question. How long can we remain anonymous before we lose our own selves forever? Imagine suddenly losing the ability to be yourself. Your dreams, desires, opinions, all of it fading into oblivion. Sounds frightening, doesn't it? These feelings are familiar to many. We compare ourselves to idealized images on social media, feeling pressure from society. We think that sometimes the only salvation is anonymity, hiding behind a mask. But what happens to our uniqueness? With every step toward anonymity, we risk losing what makes us individual. Studies have shown that among people who decide to leave their true feelings outside, there is a rise in anxiety and depression. Ultimately, we approach a dangerous line where it becomes hard to distinguish what we truly want and what society demands of us. We should reflect on how to preserve our individuality in this chaos. How do we find a balance between the need to conform and the desire to remain ourselves? These questions are becoming increasingly relevant in our society. It is time to talk about it. What if I told you that the most important treasure is not data, but wisdom? In a small village immersed in greenery and sunlight lived an old man named Pavel. He always sat on his bench by the door with a book in his hands and a smile on his face. While all the villagers were constantly connecting to neural interfaces sending their thoughts into the virtual world, Pavel remained a wonderfully solitary eccentric. He was considered strange because he did not know what it meant to send messages through desires and thoughts. But interestingly, people were drawn to him. Neighbors, children, even teenagers sought his company. They came to talk, to listen to his easygoing stories filled with life lessons. Sometimes, while sitting on his bench, someone would ask, "Why don't you use the interface?" And with a simplicity characteristic only of sages, Pavel would reply, "Because I don't want to miss the present. The present is here and now, not in the virtual world." When he spoke about his young years, about fishing in the river or berry picking in the forest, his eyes sparkled like a child's. Listening to him, people felt warmth and genuine care, which prevented them from forgetting the hustle of everyday life. He gifted them simplicity, a kind of antidote to the accelerated reality in which they lived. Pavel always said, "Time is not money. It is our heart. Every minute has meaning that cannot be wasted." And everyone who left him carried a piece of that feeling, hope, calmness, and a deep connection to the world with them. Thus, the old man became a living symbol of how one could see life differently, without the need to engage with technology for happiness. True wisdom lay in his simplicity, and this stood in stark contrast to what the rest of the world was striving for. But perhaps therein lay his strength. What if perfection is a trap? Think about it. In striving for perfection, we often lose what is most important. Forever dissatisfied with ourselves, we close the door to a world full of genuine emotions and sincere moments. How often have you felt unwanted simply because you didn't meet someone else's expectations or standards? Imagine a boy who dreams of becoming an artist. Every time he picks up a brush, he thinks about what others will think. He tries to create a piece that will please everyone, and ultimately ends up painting nothing. He fears making mistakes, and that fear robs him of the chance to express himself. How many such boys and girls are around us? When we fear being imperfect, we build walls around ourselves. Every moment we fall silent in the corner instead of sharing our thoughts is a lost opportunity. Have you ever wondered how many true friends you could have if you just allowed yourself to be yourself? Being unnoticed doesn't mean being invisible, but it is in our true vulnerability that we find strength. We forget that conveying our truth to others can be more valuable than any perfect execution. How much do we lose in striving to conform to ideals that exist only in our imagination? The question is, are you ready to take the risk and free yourself from this burden to allow yourself to be real? What if I told you that the daily habits you consider normal could ruin your life? In our world, filled with information and constant connectivity, diving into silence and solitude feels like something out of reach. But there is nothing strange about it. We have been tied to screens for too long, forgetting how pleasant it is to simply sit in silence and reflect on ourselves. Every day, as we open our social networks, we lose one of the most important things: contact with ourselves. How often have you thought about the last time you spent time on your own thoughts? The moment you write in your paper journal, you invite silence to become your ally. This is a space where no one can enter, just you and your thoughts. Imagine you take a pen, a piece of paper, and instead of scrolling through the news feed, you write down your desires, dreams, and experiences. These minutes become a true gift for the soul. It is not just solitude, it is an opportunity to look within yourself, to understand who you really are. People often say that they cannot afford to stop, that they have no time. But you know that in these moments of silence you can hear the most important voice, the voice of your heart. The value of solitude is undeniable. It is always necessary to find a balance between the world and yourself. In this whirlwind of life filled with noise and fuss, only in solitude with ourselves can we find true peace and inspiration. Do not let external noise drown out your inner melodies. Find time for yourself. Take a pen, open your journal, write. This can become your salvation, your place of power. Each time you return to your journal, you gain the opportunity to see your life anew, to realize what is truly important, and possibly to find answers to the difficult questions that trouble you. Do not miss this unique chance to learn to hear yourself. Are you ready to learn the truth about how the control system adapts to your behavior? You have no idea how quickly it recognizes any attempt to disrupt the usual order. Just imagine, you make a decision that seems completely harmless to you. But just moments later, the system is already analyzing it as a potential threat. Every action, every word of yours is under a microscope. What does it feel like? Like a hunt, where you are the prey. Isn't it frightening to realize that every step you take is being monitored? You might think that your voice, your opinion matter, but in an instant you're already recorded as a factor of instability. This is a delicate game where rivalry hides behind a mask of control. Don't let this moment become just a statistic for you. Let's remember one story. A small group of people decided to protest against the system. Their actions were spontaneous, but very quickly they became a target. Within hours, every word, every movement of them was recorded. Their freedom turned into a pastime for control. They tried to change the rules, but the system was ready for that. It adapted. And this is not just a theory, these are boundaries you shouldn't cross. The system is not only powerful, but surprisingly flexible. It flips the ideas of what it means to be free. Every time you think you can break free, you just fall into its trap. This is not just a struggle, it's an art of maneuvering. The system grabs you on the fly, learns, adjusts the course. And just when you think you've found a weakness, it turns out there are no weak points. So is it worth fighting against this? Or is it better to find a way to outsmart the system before it outsmarts you? Think about it. Just a slight step to the side, and you're already a victim. How will you act in a world where every step you take is monitored? This is not just a game. It's a fight for your identity under constant surveillance. It's time to think about how you can use this power of control to your advantage. What happens when one of the friends decides to become invisible? It's a bright morning, and the mood is at zero. The room is in the midst of an argument, everyone on edge. Andrei, sitting on the edge of the couch, hides his face in his hands, trying to ignore his like-minded friends. His friends, Rita and Maxim, are debating whether to continue the game or end it once and for all. Rita nervously says, "Enough already! You're just hiding as if that will solve anything." Maxim, supporting her, adds, "Instead of hiding, you should deal with your problems." Unable to hold back, Andrei raises his head. "You don't understand. I just want to escape from all this. It's the only way." He feels that if he disappears from this room, all unresolved issues will also vanish. But his friends look at him in confusion. Each of them is trying hard to understand what is happening. Mutual misunderstanding grows, the languages of conflict escalate, and the tension is palpable in the air. Rita exclaims, "Do you think hiding from us will solve everything? You're just distancing yourself." She feels her voice fill with anger. Maxim tries to calm the situation. "Andrei, we are your friends. We are here to support you, not to judge you." Andre, full of internal struggle, begins to question himself. Why can't I simply open up? Why does this invisibility seem like the only salvation? His heart tightens with the realization that his desire to leave, to hide, is just an attempt to avoid reality, to escape from parting, from arguments, from pain. Yet at the same time, he deeply values the understanding and support that he may soon lose. The tension mounts, and each of them realizes that one person's personal desire can lead to the collapse of their relationships. In this fight for invisibility, no one can truly become invisible. All that will intensify are the shadows that will continue to haunt them. And then, in a moment of silence, Andre finally says, "Okay, maybe you're right, but I need time. Please give me that." A new emotion appears on the friends' faces, understanding and resolution. The discussion of the situation has become the beginning of something new. How will this affect their relationship? Can the desire for solitude help find common ground? This is a question that opens the door for further reflection. What if I told you that sometimes invisibility is not just a state, but a real torture for the soul? The hero sits on the floor, hugging his knees, while through the translucent light of the night lamp comes a feeling of deep loneliness. Time seems to stop. Discomfort and fear overwhelm him. It was his first day of invisibility. He forgets the faces of people, the sounds of the world around. Every step he takes further distances him from communication, leaving only echoes of memories of what it is like to be needed. It feels like his heart beats in the rhythm of silence. He stretches out his hands, but no one can see them. Tears roll down his cheeks. This is not only fear, but also long-awaited relief. To be invisible means to escape from expectations, from the pressure that has struck at his self-esteem. Deep down, he understands that he is not ready for this. Yet he finds himself at the edge of a choice. Why is it so difficult to determine what is more important? To be visible or to feel free? He wants to scream, but in the world of invisibility, his voice fades into oblivion. He closes his eyes and feels how the tears bear witness to his inner struggle. He tries to reconcile two feelings: liberation from the roles imposed on him and the chill of loneliness. And then he understands that this momentary state is just the first step on the most challenging road. To himself, to his true self. By acknowledging his fears, he begins to hear himself slowly and uncertainly. This could be a path to healing or a dangerous descent into the abyss. But to escape from it means to find that very light to which he aspires. What if I told you that true freedom may not lie in being seen, but in remaining unnoticed? We live in a world where we are made to believe that visibility is a sign of success. Likes, comments, followers, all have become an inseparable part of our lives. But is it worth it? Imagine this. You step outside in the middle of a celebration. Crowds of people, bright lights, music. It seems like the ideal of a free life. But amidst this chaos, you suddenly realize you just want to breathe consciously without attracting attention. Being unnoticed is a chance to see the world as it is, without unnecessary fuss. How often do we feel lost in our desire to please others? We strive for restaurants where we will be seen, for events that will mark our names. But what if we are actually losing ourselves in this pursuit? Remember those little moments when you stepped into a cozy corner to enjoy a cup of coffee in silence. What did that feel like? Freedom, without unwanted gazes, without the need to play a role. So what is more important, to be in the spotlight or to feel inner peace while remaining in the shadows? This is a philosophical question worth clarifying. Perhaps true freedom is the art of remaining unnoticed while life rages around us. Let's explore this dilemma together and find the answer. What if I told you that in your city there are places where no one can find you? Secret corners, or perhaps, on the contrary, points of hope for those tired of constant surveillance. Imagine this. You walk into a small cafe in the basement of an old house, and suddenly realize that no one is watching you. Familiar faces surround you. Someone from the neighborhood, just a friend who was also looking for a place to be themselves. In the evening, all conversations begin to swirl around these zones of silence. How pleasant it is to realize that even in a world filled with surveillance technologies, there are still corners of freedom. This may seem like an illusion, but it is this illusion that brings hope. Some people call such places oases, where one can take shelter from constant pressure, while others refer to them as bastions, protecting what remains of our individuality. I have an acquaintance who opened one such corner. He says that it is not just a place but a whole philosophy, a cool way to escape from the data that we ourselves leave behind. He mixes old traditions and new technologies, creating a space where people can gather, laugh, discuss problems, and simply breathe. The question is how ready we are for this resistance. What effort do such zones require to exist? They become a safe haven from reality where everyone can look deep within themselves, reconsider their values, and catch that spark which can ignite life with new energy. We all need a place where we can be heard, so these zones are not just shelters. They are lights in the dark, reminding us that even in the darkest times we can find our way back to ourselves. Behind the betrayals of fate lies hope, and this is where it begins to play its role. What if I told you that silence can speak louder than words? Imagine, you are in an empty space where sounds fade away and your thoughts become crystal clear. This is the zone of silence. Here, every step, every breath turns into a discovery. The people who came here have shed their familiar masks, and suddenly they find themselves vulnerable. No falseness, no pretense, just genuine emotions. Among them is a man who was once a successful businessman but has lost everything. Now he begins to remember what it is like to be himself when he doesn't have to meet someone else's expectations. Fear is reflected in his eyes, but so is hope. He wonders, who am I really? A woman who has lost a loved one comes to this zone to find solace. She sits on the floor, looking through tears at the horizon, and contemplates, how do I move on? In the silence, she finds answers that resonate louder than any words. A group of friends arrives with the intention of supporting each other, but instead of familiar jokes, they dive into sincere conversations. They start to share what they have never spoken about: fears, dreams, regrets. Each word, spoken with complete honesty, brings to the surface what was buried years ago. At that moment, the space seems to fill with light. Freeing themselves from imposed roles, from the fear of being rejected, each one begins to realize that change is possible. The path to oneself proves to be challenging, but it is precisely what is worth fighting for. Gathered in this silence, they understand that everyone deserves to be heard. Each of them, having left their fears in the past, gains the opportunity to open a new chapter in life. What if right now, in this silence, you discover how the power of silence can change your life forever? What if I tell you that the deepest conversations happen not when we are surrounded by people, but in moments of silence when all attention is directed inward? In those moments when we are alone with ourselves, the true depths of our soul are revealed. We ponder who we are when no one is looking. How many times have you asked yourself, is this really me or just a mask I wear? All those roles we play in everyday life, work, family, friends, who are we really beyond those labels? Imagine this. You are sitting in silence and the only sound is your own breathing. In such moments, we can hear our most sincere thoughts and feelings. What is hidden in your dreams? What fears live inside? Have you ever wondered why we fear being authentic? What happens to you when no one is watching? As we continue to seek answers, let's pause and simply listen. Who are we when there is no gaze upon us?